December 19, 1944, 10:30 a.m. Versailles, France. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. The room smells of damp wool and cigarette smoke. Maps cover the walls, too many pins, too much red. Outside, freezing rain taps against the tall windows of the old palace, each drop a quiet reminder of how wrong everything has gone. Dwight D. Eisenhower stands at the center table, hands braced against the map of Western Europe. He hasn't slept properly in days. No one here has. The Ardennes, supposed to be quiet, secondary, safe, has exploded. German armor has punched through American lines with shocking speed. Panzer divisions are rolling west, fueled by desperation and surprise. Communications are fractured. Units are scattered. Entire regiments are missing from the map because no one knows where they are. Eisenhower is the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, but in this moment, command feels like illusion. Every option costs blood. Every delay costs ground. The generals around the table speak in low, urgent tones. Omar Bradley, Courtney Hodges, senior staff officers. Words like containment, stabilization, defensive posture drift through the room. No one says the word panic, but it hangs there anyway. Then Eisenhower looks up. George S. Patton is sitting slightly apart from the others, helmet off, polished riding boots planted firmly on the floor. His face is calm, almost bored. While others argue over how to stop the German advance, Patton has been silent. Eisenhower breaks it. "George," he says, voice tight, "what can you do?" The room quiets. Patton doesn't hesitate. He doesn't look at the map. He doesn't ask for clarification. "I can attack," he says, "with 3 divisions." Several heads turn sharply. Attack, the Germans are on the offensive. American lines are bending. Bastogne is surrounded. Logic says consolidate, dig in, slow the bleeding. Eisenhower narrows his eyes. When? Patton finally leans forward. In 72 hours. The room freezes. You can almost hear the rain outside stop. Bradley stares at him. Others exchange looks, confusion, disbelief. Turning an entire field army is not a maneuver. It's a nightmare. Third Army is facing east, driving toward the Saar. Its supply lines, fuel dumps, artillery orientations, road traffic, all aligned for an entirely different war. To turn north means stopping everything, revering traffic on frozen roads, redirecting fuel convoys, reassigning units mid-march, doing in days what normally takes weeks. Eisenhower doesn't respond immediately. He studies Patton's face, searching for something, overconfidence, bravado, maybe even insanity. But what he sees instead unsettles him. Patton isn't selling an idea. He's reporting a fact. Eisenhower asks the question that matters. "You mean you can do it, or you will do it?" Patton doesn't smile. "I've already started." That's when Eisenhower understands. This isn't confidence. This isn't improvisation. This is preparation bordering on obsession. Patton had seen the Ardennes coming, if not in detail, then in instinct. Weeks earlier, while other commanders dismissed the forest as impassable for armor, Patton had quietly planned contingencies, alternate routes, fuel stockpiles, traffic control plans. He had ordered his staff to prepare written attack orders for 3 different directions, north, east, and south, before the Germans ever moved. While others argued about whether an attack was possible, Patton had asked a different question. What happens when it comes? Now Eisenhower feels the ground shift beneath him, not from German tanks, but from realization. In the darkest moment of the Allied war effort in the West, one man at the table is not reacting. He's executing. Outside the room, the war continues to unravel. Snow blankets the Ardennes. American soldiers freeze in foxholes, unsure where the front even is anymore. German columns push forward, engines roaring, believing, perhaps for the last time, that they can still win. Inside, Eisenhower straightens. "George," he says carefully, "I want you to do it." Patton nods once. No salute, no theatrics. Just business. As Patton rises and leaves the room, Eisenhower watches him go, the weight of command pressing down harder than ever. If Patton fails, the Germans could split the Allied armies in two. Antwerp could fall. The war could stretch on for years. But if he succeeds... Eisenhower turns back to the map, eyes drawn to a small Belgian town encircled in red. Bastogne. And for the first time since the German attack began, something unfamiliar enters the room. Hope. But hope, Eisenhower knows, is a dangerous thing to gamble a war on. And Patton is about to gamble everything. Patton doesn't wait for daylight. By the time his staff car pulls away from SHAEF headquarters, orders are already moving down the chain. Telephones ring across frozen French villages. Messengers run through snow-choked motor pools. Maps are unrolled on hoods slick with ice. Third Army is about to do something no army its size has ever done under combat conditions. It is going to turn completely in the middle of winter. At his headquarters in Nancy, Patton gathers his senior staff: Lieutenant General Hugh Gaffey, Brigadier General Hobart Gay, men who know his moods, his temper, and his terrifying standards. Patton doesn't waste words. "Gentlemen, we are attacking north." There is a pause. No one interrupts. "Our objective is Bastogne. We move in 72 hours. One officer finally speaks. "Sir, our divisions are spread over more than 100 miles. Supply convoys are facing the wrong direction. Artillery is emplaced for an eastward advance. Roads are already clogged." Patton nods. He knows all of this. "Then we'll unclog them." What follows is not inspiration. It is mathematics. Patton's staff produces the plans they prepared weeks earlier, thick folders labeled simply North. Routes are color-coded. March tables already written. Traffic control points preassigned. Military police units earmarked to stand at frozen intersections and physically force traffic into new directions. This is what Eisenhower had sensed. Patton didn't hope he could turn his army. He had rehearsed it in his head long before the first German tank crossed the Ardennes. Orders go out that night. Convoys halt mid-road and reverse direction, engines groaning as drivers wrestle heavy trucks through icy switchbacks. Artillery units disassemble guns in darkness, hands numb, metal burning cold to the touch. Tank battalions refuel in silence, exhausts puffing white clouds into the black winter air. The weather is merciless. Snow thickens, roads glaze over, visibility collapses. This is the kind of weather that stops armies. Unless stopping is not an option. Military police stand at crossroads, waving pistols and flashlights, redirecting columns without explanation. Drivers curse, officers protest. No one is told the full plan, only that speed matters more than comfort, more than rest, more than understanding. Patton himself is everywhere. He appears at dawn at a bridge jammed with traffic, barking orders until movement resumes. He shows up at night in a command post, helmet still on, asking only one question: "How fast are you moving?" When someone answers with excuses, weather, ice, enemy action, Patton cuts them off. "I didn't ask why, I asked how fast." By the second day, exhaustion sets in. Men sleep in trucks while engines idle. Tank crews eat frozen rations with numb fingers. Drivers stare ahead, hypnotized by the red glow of tail lights stretching endlessly through the snow. Some units march for 30 hours straight. And still, amazingly, the timetable holds. Eisenhower receives updates every few hours. He reads them carefully, scarcely believing the numbers. Divisions that should be days behind schedule are somehow ahead. Fuel consumption is high but controlled. Traffic discipline, normally chaos under such conditions, is holding. The Germans do not see it coming. Wehrmacht intelligence believes the Americans are still reeling, focused on defense. They assume Patton's army is locked in place, facing east, incapable of sudden movement. They are wrong. On December 21st, the lead elements of Third Army begin reaching their jump-off positions south of Bastogne. Inside the encircled town, the situation is desperate. The 101st Airborne Division, along with elements of armor and artillery, is surrounded. German artillery pounds the perimeter. Supplies are running low. Wounded men lie in freezing buildings without heat. German envoys have already demanded surrender. The American reply, "Nuts," has boosted morale, but courage does not stop tanks. Inside Bastogne, officers scan the southern roads constantly. Nothing moves. And then faintly, from beyond the snow-covered hills. Artillery. American artillery. Patton arrives forward on the 22nd, standing in the cold with binoculars pressed to his eyes. Ahead, his divisions form up for the attack. Infantry regiments crouch in foxholes carved into frozen ground. Sherman tanks idle, engines rumbling like restrained animals. This is the moment. If Third Army fails to break through, Bastogne will fall. If Bastogne falls, the German advance regains momentum. Eisenhower's entire northern front is at risk. Patton knows it. Eisenhower knows it. The men freezing in Bastogne know it. At 6:00 a.m., artillery opens fire. The ground shakes. Shells scream overhead, smashing into German positions with thunderous force. Infantry rises and moves forward, boots crunching through snow stained dark by cordite and blood. Tanks push into narrow roads bordered by trees, perfect ambush terrain. The Germans fight hard. This is no collapsing enemy. These are veteran units, desperate and dangerous. Progress is slow, painfully slow. Hours pass, casualties mount. Reports come in, some good, some grim. Patton listens without expression. Then, late in the afternoon, a message arrives from the lead elements of the 4th Armored Division. Contact has been made. American tanks have broken through to the perimeter of Bastogne. The siege is cracked. Not shattered, but cracked. Patton closes his eyes for just a second. Eisenhower receives the news shortly afterward. He allows himself a rare smile, but it fades quickly. Relief has begun. But the Germans are not finished. And now that Patton has revealed his hand, the real fight for the Ardennes is only beginning. The message reaches Versailles in the early hours of December 23rd. Bastogne is no longer isolated. Dwight D. Eisenhower reads the report twice, then a third time, as if repetition might reveal a hidden flaw. The words are clinical, contact established, corridor opened, supplies moving forward, but behind them lies something far larger than the relief of one surrounded town. Eisenhower leans back in his chair. For the first time since the German offensive began, the pressure on his chest eases. But relief is not what grips him now. It is understanding. Patton did not save Bastogne by luck. He did not succeed because German resistance collapsed or because weather suddenly favored the Allies. He succeeded because, long before December 16th, he had already accepted a truth others resisted. The enemy still had initiative. While much of Allied command believed Germany was spent, incapable of large-scale offensive action, Patton never believed wars ended politely. He believed they ended violently, suddenly, and without warning. That belief had shaped everything. Eisenhower looks again at the operational maps. The neat arrows of Third Army's advance tell a story that words cannot. This was not a single bold maneuver. It was the visible result of countless small decisions made in advance, training that emphasized movement over comfort, discipline over debate, readiness over rest. And Eisenhower realizes something unsettling. If Patton had not been in position, if Third Army had been led by a cautious commander, if the staff had not been pushed mercilessly to plan for contingencies that made no sense at the time, there would have been no counterattack in 72 hours. There would have been no relief. Bastogne would have fallen. The Germans would have widened the breach. The war in the West might have taken a very different course. This is the realization Eisenhower does not say aloud. As Supreme Commander, Eisenhower values cooperation, balance, restraint. Patton values none of these things when time is short. He values momentum. He values violence applied decisively. He values speed so extreme it borders on recklessness. And yet, in this moment, that very recklessness has become the Allied war effort's greatest asset. Reports continue to arrive. Patton's corridor into Bastogne is narrow and dangerous, constantly shelled by German artillery. But it holds. Supplies reach the 101st Airborne, ammunition, food, medical gear. Wounded men are evacuated south, wrapped in blankets stiff with frost. Morale surges. Inside Bastogne, soldiers who had prepared for annihilation now prepare to counterattack. Eisenhower issues new orders. The Allied line is to pivot around Patton's thrust. Montgomery's forces in the north will press south. The Bulge will be squeezed shut, not by caution, but by pressure from every side. The Germans begin to understand what they are facing. Intercepted communications reveal confusion, anger, disbelief. German commanders had counted on time, on Allied paralysis, on logistical inertia. They had not expected an American army to turn like a blade in mid-swing. Now German fuel runs low, roads clog with retreating vehicles. Luftwaffe sorties fail to halt the advance. And Patton does not slow down. He pushes. Every mile gained is exploited, every hesitation punished. Where German units attempt to regroup, Third Army hits them again, forcing constant movement, constant reaction. Patton's doctrine is simple: keep them off balance and they will break. Eisenhower watches the reports with a mixture of admiration and unease. He knows Patton is not easy to control. He never has been. There will be incidents. There will be controversies. There will be moments when Patton goes too far, says too much, pushes too hard. But Eisenhower now understands something essential about command in modern war. Victory does not belong solely to planners or diplomats. Sometimes it belongs to the man who refuses to be surprised. As December turns toward January, the German offensive collapses. The Bulge begins to shrink. What had looked like a potential catastrophe becomes, instead, a brutal failure for Hitler's last gamble in the West. History will remember many things about the Battle of the Bulge: the cold, the courage, the stubborn defense. But Eisenhower will remember something else. A quiet moment in a smoke-filled room at Versailles. A question asked in desperation. And a calm answer that changed the war. I've already started. Eisenhower stands alone at the map now, fingers tracing the lines where Patton's army moved north against all logic, all expectation. He allows himself one final thought, private, unspoken. This is what preparedness looks like when history comes crashing through the door. Patton doesn't wait for daylight. By the time his staff car pulls away from SHAEF headquarters, orders are already moving, quietly, relentlessly, down the chain of command. Telephones ring in frozen farmhouses converted into command posts. Messengers run through snow-choked motor pools, boots slipping on ice. Maps are slapped onto truck hoods, held down with gloved hands and spent coffee mugs. Third Army is about to do something no army of its size is supposed to do in the middle of combat. It is going to turn completely in winter. At his headquarters near Nancy, Patton assembles his senior staff. Lieutenant General Hugh Gaffey stands to one side. Brigadier General Hobart Gay, Patton's chief of staff, already knows what's coming. He's seen the folders. Patton wastes no time. "Gentlemen," he says, voice flat, controlled, "we are attacking north." No one interrupts. "Our objective is Bastogne. We move in 72 hours. For a moment, the only sound is the stove crackling in the corner. Finally, an officer clears his throat. "Sir, Third Army is oriented east. Our divisions are spread over 100 miles. Fuel dumps, artillery, supply routes, they're all facing the Saar." Patton nods once. He's not annoyed, he's prepared. "Then we will turn them." What follows is not a speech. It is logistics, cold, unforgiving, exact. Folders are opened. Plans slide across the table. Route overlays, march tables, traffic control diagrams. Orders written weeks earlier for a situation that wasn't supposed to exist. This is what Eisenhower sensed back at Versailles. Patton didn't improvise under pressure. He prepared for disbelief. Military police units are assigned to crossroads they've never seen. Fuel convoys are rerouted in reverse order. Artillery battalions are told to tear down gun positions they just finished digging and move. Now, not tomorrow. Orders ripple outward through the night. Truck columns halt and reverse on narrow, icy roads. Engines stall. Drivers curse. Someone skids into a ditch and is dragged free by a tank without slowing the column behind it. There is no room for comfort. Only momentum. The weather is brutal. Snow falls thick and wet, turning roads into glass. Visibility drops to a few dozen yards. This is the kind of weather German planners believed would freeze Allied armies in place. Patton's men move anyway. They sleep in shifts of minutes. They eat frozen rations without complaint. Tank crews huddle against warm engine blocks while mechanics work barehanded, skin sticking to metal. Patton appears everywhere, sometimes announced, sometimes not. He steps into command posts uninvited, helmet still on, eyes sharp. "How fast are you moving?" he asks. If an officer starts to explain why it's slow, Patton cuts him off. "I didn't ask why." On the second day, exhaustion sets in. Traffic jams stretch for miles. Vehicles break down faster than they can be repaired. And yet, somehow, the columns keep flowing north. Eisenhower receives hourly updates. Divisions are ahead of schedule. Fuel consumption is high but controlled. The impossible is becoming routine. German intelligence misses it completely. Wehrmacht analysts assume the Americans are still reacting, digging in, shoring up defenses, scrambling. They believe Patton's army is fixed in place, locked into its eastward posture. They do not see the blade turning. By December 21st, the lead elements of Third Army reach attack positions south of Bastogne. Inside the town, the situation is desperate. The 101st Airborne is surrounded. Artillery shells fall day and night. Medics operate in freezing basements. German envoys have already demanded surrender. The answer, nuts, is defiant, but defiance does not stop armor. Then faintly from the south, American artillery. Patton arrives forward on December 22nd, binoculars raised, breath fogging in the cold. Sherman tanks idle on snow-covered roads. Infantry crouches in foxholes chipped from frozen earth. At 6:00 a.m., the guns open up. The ground shakes. Shells scream overhead. Infantry moves forward into tree-lined roads perfect for ambush. German resistance is fierce. This is no collapsing enemy. Progress is slow. Casualties rise. Then late in the afternoon, a report reaches Patton. Elements of the 4th Armored Division have broken through. They've reached Bastogne. The siege is cracked, not shattered but cracked. Patton lowers his binoculars. The gamble has worked. But now the Germans know what they're facing. And the fight for the Ardennes is far from over. The report reaches Versailles before dawn. December 23, 1944. Dwight D. Eisenhower stands alone in the map room, coat still on, tie loosened, eyes red from another night without sleep. The paper in his hands is thin, but it feels heavy. Bastogne is no longer isolated. The words are precise, unemotional, staff language, but Eisenhower reads them twice, then a third time, as if searching for what they don't say. The corridor is narrow, the fighting is intense, the situation is still dangerous. But the line holds. Eisenhower exhales slowly. Around him, the great maps of Europe remain cluttered with arrows and pins, but something fundamental has shifted. The German offensive, once a knife thrust toward Antwerp, has lost its rhythm. And Eisenhower knows why. Not because the weather improved. Not because German tanks suddenly ran out of fuel. Not because Allied air power returned. Those things will come later. This moment belongs to preparation. Eisenhower walks closer to the wall map. Tracing the path of Third Army with his finger, he sees it clearly now. Patton did not respond to the crisis. He absorbed it. Weeks earlier, while others dismissed the Ardennes as unsuitable for armor, Patton had asked his staff to imagine the worst. He had demanded contingency plans that seemed unnecessary, even paranoid. Alternate routes, emergency fuel allocations, march tables written in advance for directions no one expected to move. At the time, it had looked like excess. Now it looks like foresight. Eisenhower feels a familiar tension tighten in his chest, not fear this time, but responsibility. As Supreme Commander, he has spent years balancing egos, smoothing rivalries, preventing one man's ambition from damaging the coalition. Patton has always been the most difficult piece on the board. Brilliant, uncontrolled, dangerous. And yet here, in the darkest hours of the Bulge, Patton has delivered something no committee ever could. Speed. Reports continue to flow in. Supplies are reaching Bastogne. Wounded are being evacuated south under fire. The 101st Airborne, once bracing for annihilation, is reorganizing for offensive action. Morale surges across the line. Eisenhower turns to his staff. "We press everywhere," he says. "No pauses." Orders go out. Montgomery in the north is instructed to tighten his grip. Bradley's forces stabilize and prepare to push back. The German salient, once expanding, is now under pressure from all sides. German command begins to fracture. Intercepted messages reveal confusion. Units are ordered forward, then told to halt. Fuel shortages worsen. Roads clog with stalled vehicles and retreating columns. The tempo that once belonged to Germany now belongs to the Allies. And at the center of it all, Patton keeps moving. He does not stop at Bastogne. He does not pause for congratulations. Third Army continues to grind north and east, forcing German units to react constantly, denying them time to regroup. Patton's philosophy is ruthless. Momentum is mercy. Stop and men die. Eisenhower watches it unfold with a mix of admiration and unease. He knows Patton will test limits again. He always does. There will be incidents. There will be headlines. There will be moments when Patton must be restrained for the sake of the alliance. But Eisenhower has learned something irreversible. In modern war, preparation is not paperwork. It is mindset. As December bleeds into January, the Bulge collapses. What began as Hitler's last gamble becomes a grinding defeat. The German army in the West is shattered beyond recovery. History will record the numbers, casualties, divisions, miles gained and lost. But Eisenhower will remember something else. A quiet voice in a smoke-filled room. A promise that sounded impossible. And a realization that came too late to doubt. Patton hadn't guessed. He had been ready, January 1945. The Ardennes is silent now, not peaceful but emptied. Burned-out tanks sit half-buried in snowdrifts. Frozen roads are littered with abandoned helmets, ration tins, broken rifles. The German offensive that once threatened to split the Allied front has collapsed into retreat. Dwight D. Eisenhower stands before a fresh set of maps. The bulge is gone. The lines are straighter now, cleaner. Order has returned. But Eisenhower knows the truth. This war did not turn here because of lines on paper. It turned because time was stolen from the enemy. 72 hours. That was the margin between disaster and recovery, between a broken front and a restored one, between Hitler's last gamble succeeding or dying in the snow. Eisenhower reflects on how close it came. Had Patton needed 5 days instead of 3, Bastogne might have fallen. Had Third Army paused to reorganize, German armor could have surged west again. Had anyone else been in command, someone more cautious, more conventional, the response would have been slower. And slowness in December 1944 would have been fatal. Eisenhower thinks back to the man himself. George S. Patton was never easy. He offended allies, terrified subordinates, and broke rules that others considered sacred. His discipline was brutal, his language crude, his confidence exhausting. But Eisenhower understands something now that few ever truly grasp. Patton did not love war. He loved being ready for it. His obsession with speed, his relentless training schedules, his refusal to tolerate complacency, these were not theatrics. They were insurance. Insurance against surprise. Insurance against moments when history offers no time to think. In the Ardennes, that insurance paid off. Patton's men paid for it too, through exhaustion, frostbite, and blood, but they paid it forward in advance before the crisis came. When the moment arrived, they did not need inspiration. They needed orders. And they moved. Eisenhower steps away from the map. He knows the war is not yet over. Germany will fight on. More men will die. More hard decisions await. But the outcome is no longer in doubt. The German army has spent its last strategic reserve. Its final chance to change the war has been crushed, not by surprise, but by readiness. 72 hours. That is what Eisenhower realized when Patton made his promise. That preparation, when pushed to its limit, looks like audacity. That speed, when planned in advance, looks like genius. And that sometimes, the difference between collapse and survival is not courage in the moment, but obsession before it. The snow begins to melt in the Ardennes. Spring will come. The Allies will cross the Rhine. The war in Europe will end. But long after the maps are cleared and the guns fall silent, one lesson remains. History does not reward those who react. It remembers those who were already moving. And